Hey guys, it's Saga from TechWorks, and in this video, let us put the cameras on the new Mi A3 against the ones on the Redmi Note 7 Pro and the Realme 3 Pro. All these phones are being sold at almost similar price point, and I think all of them pack a really good set of cameras, so it will be interesting to see which one of these comes on top. Mi A3 is the newest of the bunch, and it comes with a triple camera setup where the primary camera has a 48 megapixel sensor with f1.8 aperture, secondary camera gets a 8 megapixel sensor coupled with f2.2 aperture and a 13mm ultra-wide angle lens. And third and the final camera gets a 2 megapixel depth sensor with f2.4 aperture. Note 7 Pro has the same 48 megapixel primary camera with f1.8 aperture as the Mi A3, and the secondary camera gets a 5 megapixel depth sensor with f2.4 aperture. Realme 3 Pro has a 16 megapixel primary sensor with f1.7 aperture, and the secondary camera again gets a 5 megapixel depth sensor with f2.4 aperture. All three can shoot 4K videos in up to 30 fps and 1080p videos in up to 240 fps. At the front, Mi A3 gets a mammoth 32 megapixel sensor with f2.0 aperture. Note 7 Pro has a 13 megapixel sensor with f2.0 aperture, and the Realme 3 Pro comes with a 25 megapixel sensor again with f2.0 aperture. If you want a better look at the camera interface on these phones, make sure to check out my dedicated camera reviews of all these phones. I will leave card to those videos on the top right corner of the screen and also link them in the description section right below that like button. Now before we head over to the image and video samples, if you are new to this channel, please make sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon next to it. That way, you won't miss out on any of the amazing videos coming up on this channel. Starting with the daylight images, you can see all three capture a lot of details, and these images look very good straight out of the camera. All images are sharp and show a good amount of contrast. There is a slight difference in the way all of them capture and reproduce colors, and depending on your color preference, you may prefer one over the other. If we zoom in on these images, we see the Mi A3 and Note 7 Pro showing more details, while the image from the Realme 3 Pro is showing a bit less detail and slightly more noise. Which means the 12 megapixel images that use pixel binning from the Mi A3 and Redmi Note 7 Pro are a tad bit better than the 16 megapixel images from the Realme 3 Pro. If we zoom out and take a look at these images, you will barely notice any of these differences, so if you ask me, I would say all three take amazing images in these bright lighting conditions. As I said before, all of them have a slightly different way of capturing and processing colors. None of them are very accurate or even consistent with colors in various lighting conditions, but if I had to choose, colors from the Mi A3 are closest to the actual scene. Realme 3 Pro saturates the colors at times, and colors from the Note 7 Pro are a bit on the muted side when I compare these images with the colors of the actual scene. You cannot switch to the depth sensor on any of these phones unless you are taking portrait shots, but on the Mi A3, you have the option to switch to the ultra-wide angle lens, and it will let you get more of your scene in the shot like you see in these set of images. This wide lens is not as sharp or detailed as the primary camera, especially towards the edges, but it is still nice to have this option if you want to occasionally switch to it for adding a different perspective to your shot. Other two phones don't even have this option, so we will have to say the Mi A3 is a bit more versatile of the three. I had all these phones on auto HDR while taking these photos, and the Redmi Note 7 Pro is the one who actually switches to the HDR mode more often. If you guys got my Mi A3's camera review, you know it had some problems with the HDR mode at the start, where it would completely blow up the highlights or sometimes mess up the contrast levels in the shadows. But that issue seems to be fixed with a minor software update which I got a few days back. Because I took a lot of HDR shots on this trip, and all of them turned out pretty well. All three phones are doing a good job with the HDR mode turned on. They are bringing good amount of details on the shadows and also preserving the information in the highlights, all of this while keeping the noise levels down. Realme 3 Pro is a bit more aggressive with the HDR mode, and it tends to oversaturate the colors in some of the HDR shots. All the images from the Mi A3 and the Redmi Note 7 Pro are 12 megapixel shots with pixel binning. If you want, you can switch to the 48 megapixel mode to add a bit more details to your shots. The Realme 3 Pro doesn't have a high resolution sensor, but it can still take 64 megapixel images by combining information from multiple 16 megapixel images into one shot. These images are huge in terms of file size, just like the real 48 megapixel images from the Mi A3 and the Note 7 Pro. But when we zoom in, we see that the Realme 3 Pro's images are a bit softer compared to the other two. All these high resolution images look good to begin with, but to notice any difference between these and normal 12 or 16 megapixel images, you will have to zoom in 3 to 4 times on each shot. So I would say, unless you are capturing some landscapes, or if you are planning to crop in on a particular part of an image later on, sticking to the normal 12 and 16 megapixel modes on these phones is a better option. Coming to the close-up shots. The Mi A3 is slowest at focusing on a nearby object of these three. But with some time, it latches onto the focus and the close-up shots turn out to be just as good as the ones from the Note 7 Pro and the Realme 3 Pro. These three have a very wide aperture on the primary camera, so the background in all these close-up shots get a very nice optical blur. Colors are a bit off in some of the close-up shots from the Realme 3 Pro, but you will only notice this when you are looking at the same images side by side, which is not what we normally do with our smartphones. Till now, all these phones have been taking amazing images, and other than the wide-angle lens on the Mi A3 and the slight difference in the colors, there isn't much that is separating the cameras on these phones. So when it comes to daylighting situations, you can pick either one of these and be happy with the images that they produce. I personally take a lot of portrait shots, and whether or not a phone is good at taking these shots plays a big part in my decision making process when I buy a new phone for my daily usage. Right from the first look, you can see the colors on the Mi A3 are a bit on the greener side, and skin in the Realme 3 Pro's shot is a bit too smooth and saturated, which I don't really like. In this sort of images, I think the one from the Redmi Note 7 Pro is looking the best and most balanced. We see a similar trend in the next sort of images as well. Note 7 Pro again has a better and sharper looking portrait shot. Edge detection is not perfect on any of these phones, but this is something that can get better with time and a few software updates. I had the beauty mode turned off on all these phones, but still the main subject for these portrait shots from the Realme 3 Pro are very soft. A3 is again showing weird colors, and the Note 7 Pro again seems to be doing a good job. Blur to the background is good and natural in all these portrait shots, but the subject and the edge detection from the Note 7 Pro looks the best to me. If you are taking portrait shots in very low light, here the Realme 3 Pro does a slightly better job. It still saturates the skin tones, but the overall images look much better. I still prefer Redmi Note 7 Pro for taking portrait shots because it gives better results more consistently. This continues even while we take portrait shots of objects. Edge detection on all these phones get a bit better while taking portraits of objects, but the A3 still captures a weird color shift, Realme 3 Pro still saturates the colors, and the Note 7 Pro still continues to capture the best and balanced portrait shots of all. I think about this every time. How many of you really use the portrait mode very often? May it be for capturing portraits of people or objects, let me know in the comments, and if you don't use it too often, please also let me know the reason for it. I'm just curious. Let us now move to the images shot in indoor, artificial and lower lighting conditions. This is an indoor shot in daytime, and out of the three, one from the Realme 3 Pro looks to be on the softer side, while the ones from the Note 7 Pro and the Mi A3 look pretty sharp. Here is another set of images, and in this one, image from the Mi A3 appears a bit soft compared to the other two. Just like with the close-up shots, Mi A3 again takes a bit more time to set the focus in these lighting conditions, and sometimes the images just turn out to be a bit out of focus like you see in this shot. But when it gets the focus right, A3 can take really good images in lower lighting conditions. In this shot, the Mi A3 tried to take a balanced approach where it tried to set the moderate exposure so the highlights are not overly blown and there is not too much noise in the shadows either, which is exactly opposite of what the Realme 3 Pro did. It managed the brighter areas well, but filled up the shadows with noise, making the overall image look bad. The Redmi Note 7 Pro did a good job with highlights and also kept the noise from the shadows down. In this set of images, Realme 3 Pro did very well and its images look just as good as the ones from the other two phones. Again, you can see the difference in the way all three capture colors. None of them show the true colors of the scene, but in this case, Note 7 Pro is closest to how the scene actually looked. Now the different colors in these three images are because the light was continuously changing color every second, and it doesn't have to do anything with how they capture these colors. I just wanted to show you that even in such dim conditions, all three can take good and usable images. You can either be happy with these low light images, or you can switch to the night mode on all and get even better looking shots. Night mode on all these phones help them take better, brighter and more sharper images in lower light. Realme 3 Pro again saturates the colors more compared to how they look in real life, but look at the amount of details that these night mode images bring in compared to the auto mode ones. Normally, if it is not for these camera comparison videos, I don't take a lot of images in such low light. The main reason being that the images turn out too grainy. I thought this will change once I get phones with night mode, but even with the option of night mode, I still don't take too many shots in lower light. Simply because these night mode images take 2, 3 or sometimes even 5 seconds to capture and then a few more seconds to process. And if you have something or someone move even a bit in that time, they are blurred out and you will have to retake the shot. I gave these phones to some of my friends for taking images in lower light, and they all thought the same, that while the night mode gives very good results, they prefer not using it because it takes too much time. Now, as good as these images look, and as much as we reviewers like to praise the night mode capabilities of any smartphones, don't base your buying decision on how good the night mode on a particular phone is. Because chances are, you will try it a few times when the phone is new, and then just stick to the normal auto mode just because it is convenient. Now for some of you who are willing to spend 8 to 10 seconds for taking these night mode images, I think all of them do a very good job with it, but the Note 7 Pro is the one capturing lowest amount of noise in most of these shots. That brings us to the front-facing cameras. This is where the Mi A3 leaps ahead of the Note 7 Pro and the Realme 3 Pro. All the selfies that you take with this Mi A3 are very detailed, and for the most part, it also shows accurate looking colors. Realme 3 Pro is the next best at taking selfies, while the Note 7 Pro falls way behind both of them when it comes to taking normal selfies with the front-facing camera. Mi A3 is again the sharpest while taking portrait selfies, but the other two are not too behind this time. Edge detection still needs to get a bit better with software updates on the Mi A3, but it is still better than the edge detection on the Realme 3 Pro and the Redmi Note 7 Pro. Here's a video from the Realme 3 Pro, Mi A3 and the Redmi Note 7 Pro. You can see how all these phones are handling the overall colors of the scene, exposure and stabilization when I'm walking around with them. All these phones can shoot 4K videos in up to 30 FPS. The Note 7 Pro had some major frame drop issues when it first came out. Redmi has been sending out software updates to fix it, and now the issue seems to be completely gone. 1080p 30 FPS videos are electronically stabilized on all these phones, and they look very good. So in terms of videos, these phones are pretty much on even grounds. Mi A3 has an advantage over the other two thanks to the secondary wide-angle lens, and it also takes much better selfies. Realme 3 Pro has a very good set of cameras, but since it's using a low resolution sensor, there aren't too many details in its images when you zoom way in. It also messes up the skin tones in most of the portrait shots. Redmi Note 7 Pro is the oldest among these three phones, and it is still surprisingly holding its ground when it comes to the cameras. It has been most consistent in all lighting conditions and the best when it comes to taking portrait shots. It is just a bit behind when you want to take selfies with it. Now, I don't take a lot of selfies, so for me and the kind of photography that I like to do with my smartphone, I think the Redmi Note 7 Pro seems to be the best of these three. But if you are someone who takes a lot of selfies, then go with the Mi A3. Realme 3 Pro, despite of taking some amazing images, gets third spot in my list, just because it saturates the colors way too much in some of the shots, and it is not very good when it comes to taking portrait shots. But other than that, all three phones have a very good set of cameras. Redmi is on its way to launch the Note 8 Pro in the next few weeks, so if you are considering the Note 7 Pro, I will suggest you to wait for some more time and then make your decision. If you are leaning towards the Mi A3, by all means, get it. It is a new phone, and Xiaomi usually follows a yearly update cycle for the A series phones, so the next one is long time away. What do you guys think about the cameras on these phones, and which one do you think performed the best? Let me know in the comments. Your choice might not be the same as mine, and what I expect out of a smartphone's camera might not be the same as you, so make sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments. That is it for this video, guys. Please hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe to the channel for more quality tech videos like this. You can also check out some of the other videos from this channel. This has been Sagar, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take care.